You know what nobody talks about? The smartest people in any room are usually the quietest ones in it, not because they have nothing to say, because they've already had the entire conversation in their head 3 times before anyone else even opened their mouth. And here's what's strange. These people don't look exceptional. They don't perform their intelligence. They don't announce it. In fact, if you didn't know what to look for, you'd probably walk right past them. Maybe you already have. Maybe, and I think this is more likely, you're one of them. Let's start with the one that shapes everything else. For most people, the external world is primary. What's happening around them, who's in the room, what's being said, that's where they live. But for a certain kind of mind, the internal world carries more weight than the external one. The ideas, the theories, the mental models, the questions that have no clean answer, that's where home is. This isn't escapism, it's architecture. The brain of a highly intelligent introvert isn't retreating from the world. It's building a more detailed version of it internally, one that accounts for possibilities, contradictions, and layers that the surface version simply doesn't show. And here's what that produces: a person who can seem distracted, distant, or disengaged, while simultaneously running some of the most sophisticated thinking happening anywhere in the room. The absence of visible effort doesn't mean the absence of extraordinary depth. I think this is one of the most misunderstood things about a genuinely high-functioning mind. Most people, when presented with a problem, look for the answer, but a certain kind of thinker immediately begins mapping the system behind the problem, the underlying structure, the variables, the second and third order consequences that most people never get to because they stopped at the first available solution. This is why these people are often slow to give opinions, not because they don't have one, because they've already seen 6 versions of the opinion, stress-tested each one, found the flaws in all of them, and are now genuinely uncertain which version is most accurate. And you know what that looks like from the outside? Hesitation, overthinking, inability to decide. But it's not indecision, it's integrity. The mind refuses to offer a shallow answer when it knows a deeper one exists, even when the shallow answer would be so much easier for everyone involved. Here's one that almost nobody expects, and research keeps confirming anyway. The assumption is that a highly analytical mind is an emotionally detached one, cold, logical, unmoved, but the data tells a completely different story. People with this cognitive profile tend to experience emotional depth that is significantly more intense than average, not less. Kazimierz Dabrowski, a psychologist who spent his career studying gifted individuals, identified what he called psychic overexcitability, a heightened sensitivity to emotional stimuli that makes these individuals acutely responsive to beauty, injustice, music, human suffering, and moral complexity. Not as a mood, as a baseline. What makes this invisible is that the same mind that feels deeply is also extraordinarily good at containing what it feels. The analytical capacity doesn't replace the emotional one, it manages it. So the intensity is real. The world just rarely sees it. And carrying something that real, that quietly, for that long, that's its own kind of weight. You know what's interesting about people with this kind of mind in social situations? They're almost never the loudest person present. And that absence of volume gets consistently misread as absence of contribution. But watch what they're actually doing. They're listening to what isn't being said as much as what is. They're tracking the subtext, the emotional undercurrent, the gap between what someone's words are doing and what those words are actually communicating. They're building a more complete picture of what's happening in the room than most people in the room are aware of. Research on general cognitive ability and social perception consistently shows that higher intelligence correlates with greater accuracy in reading emotional and social signals. But it also means these individuals need more processing time before they respond, because they're integrating far more data points than the average person is collecting. The quiet one doesn't have less to say. They usually have the most complete picture of what's actually happening. And by the time they're ready to speak, the conversation has often moved on, so they stay quiet, and the world mistakes their silence for emptiness. I think about this one a lot. There is a version of curiosity that most people experience. It shows up, gets satisfied, and goes away. But for a certain kind of mind, curiosity doesn't work like that. It compounds. Every answer generates 3 more questions. Every field of study opens into 4 adjacent fields that are equally fascinating. Every idea connects to something else, which connects to something else, which connects somewhere completely unexpected at 2 in the morning. Neuroscientist Rex Jung's research at the University of New Mexico found that higher intelligence is associated with richer connectivity between distant regions of the brain, not just faster isolated processing. The highly intelligent brain isn't just thinking more quickly. It's making connections across a vastly larger network simultaneously, all the time, without being asked to. This is why these people can seem scattered, multiple interests, unfinished projects, switching direction suddenly. But it's not inconsistency. It's a mind that genuinely cannot resist following an interesting thread wherever it leads. The rabbit hole isn't a distraction. It is the work. This one is hard to talk about without it sounding like self-pity. It isn't. People with this cognitive profile tend to hold their own output to an internal standard that is genuinely unreachable, not because the standard is irrational, but because the mind can already clearly see what excellence would require. Every flaw, every gap between the idea in the head and the thing that came out on the page or in the conversation or in the finished work. Psychologist Albert Ellis observed that highly intelligent individuals were among the most prone to treating any gap between their potential and their performance as evidence of fundamental inadequacy, not laziness, not ordinary self-criticism. A persistent, low-grade conviction that the output doesn't match what the mind knows it should be capable of producing. And here's what that produces in practice. The most important work never starts, because starting means eventually finishing. And finishing means submitting the real version of yourself to a standard you already know you might not meet. The blank page isn't fear of failure. It's a mind that cares too much about doing the thing right. You know what the most exhausting social experience is for this kind of mind? Not conflict, not difficult conversations, small talk, not because these people are arrogant, because their brains are built for a level of conversation that most social environments simply don't provide. Lita Hollingworth, a psychologist who spent decades studying gifted adults, identified what she called stimulus poverty, the experience of a mind that cannot find sufficient intellectual challenge in its immediate environment. What she was describing wasn't superiority, it was hunger. A quiet, persistent longing for a conversation that actually goes somewhere. For someone who could follow an idea all the way to the bottom without needing to turn back. The result is a person who has become extraordinarily skilled at performing engagement while experiencing almost none. Who shows up to social situations, says the right things, laughs at the right moments, and comes home completely empty, not because people aren't worth knowing, because most conversations aren't built to hold what this kind of mind actually needs to say. Here's something that separates this kind of mind from almost every other kind. Most people treat their beliefs like possessions, something to defend, something that, if challenged, threatens who they are. But a mind built for genuine inquiry treats beliefs as working hypotheses, the best current model, held lightly, ready to be revised when better information arrives. This is called cognitive flexibility in research literature, and it's one of the most consistent markers of advanced reasoning ability. The mind isn't attached to being right about any specific thing. It's committed to having the most accurate possible picture of reality, even when accuracy requires discarding something it previously held with certainty. From the outside, this looks like inconsistency, or worse, like weakness. The person who changes their position seems unreliable. But what's actually happening is the opposite of confusion. It's a mind running an honest, continuous update process that most people's thinking never runs at all. I don't think most people understand what boredom feels like at this level. It isn't mild restlessness, it isn't impatience. It's closer to a neurological ache, a sharp, insistent signal that the environment is not providing what the brain was built to process. Neuroscientific research has linked higher cognitive ability to higher baseline dopamine activity in the prefrontal cortex, the brain's reward system for novel information and intellectual challenge. When that challenge disappears, the signal doesn't just drop, it drops sharply. The brain interprets understimulation almost as a kind of deprivation. This is why these people change careers more than once, pursue interests that seem unrelated, abandon situations that look from the outside like they should be perfectly satisfying. The brain isn't being ungrateful. It's running a search for the level of input it requires to function, and no amount of willpower changes what the brain is built to need. This is the one that people find hardest to believe from the outside. Someone this intelligent, this analytically capable, surely they must feel confident. Surely they must know, more than most people, that their thinking is reliable. But the Dunning-Kruger effect works in both directions. At the low end, limited competence produces high confidence because the person can't see the complexity they're missing. At the high end, deep competence produces persistent uncertainty because the deeper your understanding of any domain, the more clearly you can see how much remains genuinely unresolved. Intelligence doesn't produce certainty. It produces a more precise map of how much territory remains unexplored. And for a mind that has explored further than most, that map is very, very large. The self-doubt isn't a weakness, it's a direct consequence of seeing further than most people ever do, and this is the one that ties everything else together. Not dramatic alienation, not a crisis of identity. Just a quiet, persistent, low-grade awareness of being slightly out of sync with the immediate environment, the conversations that don't go deep enough, the social norms that don't make sense when examined closely. The sense that there's a version of engagement available somewhere that this particular environment isn't offering. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, whose decades of research on exceptional minds remains foundational in cognitive science, found that individuals with the greatest intellectual capacity almost universally described their inner lives as the most complex, the most difficult to explain, not because they were suffering uniquely, because they were experiencing life at a level of resolution that most of the people around them weren't operating at. And when you process more, connect more, and feel more than the environment around you consistently offers a mild, permanent sense of not quite fitting is almost mathematically inevitable. Now, everything I've described above exists in varying degrees across different kinds of minds. But there is one specific cognitive type where nearly every single one of these traits doesn't just appear, it concentrates. INTPs, introverted, intuitive, thinking, perceiving, represent somewhere between 3 and 5% of the population. And when you combine this personality architecture with a genuinely high IQ, you get something that is extraordinarily rare and extraordinarily misunderstood. But here's what makes the high IQ INTP specifically unusual. The same cognitive architecture that makes them exceptional at building internal models of complex systems also makes them exceptionally difficult to satisfy. Their standards for their own thinking are higher than the standards most people apply to anything. Their tolerance for intellectual shallowness is essentially zero, and their ability to simultaneously hold multiple conflicting possibilities in mind without needing to prematurely resolve them, a capacity called negative capability, is something most cognitive frameworks aren't even built to measure. An INTP with a high IQ doesn't just think differently. They experience the world at a resolution that most people never encounter. I think the cruelest part of this profile is what I'd call the isolation paradox. The very traits that make INTPs intellectually exceptional are the same traits that make deep connection genuinely difficult. The depth of their thinking makes casual conversation feel hollow. The intensity of their internal world makes external engagement feel thin. Precision of their standards makes most available relationships feel insufficient, not because the people in those relationships lack value, but because the depth of connection this kind of mind requires is simply rare. And so they adapt. They calibrate themselves down. They perform a version of social engagement that is functional and convincing and costs them something significant every time. What the world sees is someone who seems fine. What's actually happening is someone running a constant translation between who they are and what the environment can hold. Let me be direct about something. Every trait in this profile gets consistently misread. The solitude looks antisocial. The silence looks empty. The self-doubt looks like insecurity. The procrastination looks like laziness. The boredom looks like ingratitude. The inability to commit to shallow engagement looks like arrogance. But here's what's actually present underneath every single one of those misreadings. A mind that was built to go further than most environments allow. That feels more than most people expect. That questions more carefully than most conversations reward. That carries a standard for its own thinking that nobody else imposed because nobody else could see clearly enough to impose it. The collection of traits that looks, from the outside, like a series of quiet difficulties is actually the signature of a mind operating at a level most people never reach. Here's what I want to leave you with. If you've been watching this and recognizing yourself not in a flattering way, but in the way you recognize yourself in something that finally names what you've been carrying, I want you to sit with that for a moment, because the loneliness of this profile is real. The exhaustion of translating yourself for environments that weren't built for you is real. The weight of seeing more than you were asked to see, feeling more than you show, and holding a standard for yourself that nobody else can even fully perceive, that's real. But so is this. The same architecture that makes everything harder is the architecture that makes everything deeper. The mind that can't find satisfaction in shallow answers is the mind that eventually finds the real ones. Person who has always felt slightly out of step with everything around them, that person was never broken. They were built for a different resolution, and the world, eventually, tends to need exactly that. If something in this video put words to something you've been carrying quietly for a long time, leave it in the comments. I read all of them, And if you know someone who's been misread their whole life in exactly these ways, send this to them. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for someone is show them that what they thought was a flaw is actually a fingerprint. I'll see you in the next one.